The USS Connecticut SSN-22, one of the U.S. Navy's most advanced and secretive nuclear-powered fast attack submarines, is finally on track to return to operational service by the end of 2026 after suffering catastrophic damage in an undersea collision in late 2021. The incident, which occurred in the depths of the South China Sea, was one of the most serious peacetime accidents involving a U.S. Navy submarine in decades. It triggered a long and complex chain of repairs, investigations, leadership changes, and strategic recalculations across the Navy's submarine force. More than 4 years after the collision, the vessel remains in dry dock undergoing intensive structural and systems repair at the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard in Bremerton, Washington, and its journey toward reactivation has become a case study in both the strengths and weaknesses of modern U.S. undersea warfare logistics. The Connecticut is one of just 3 submarines of the Seawolf-class, a Cold War-era project that was originally intended to deliver nearly 30 submarines that would outmatch the Soviet Union's most capable underwater threats. Each Seawolf-class boat was designed to dive deeper, move faster, and operate more quietly than anything else in the water. These vessels were outfitted with cutting-edge sonar, weapon systems, and sensors, and they could operate undetected in some of the world's most contested maritime environments. However, after the collapse of the Soviet Union and a reallocation of military spending in the early 1990s, the ambitious Seawolf program was abruptly curtailed. Only 3 submarines were ever built: the USS Seawolf SSN-21, USS Connecticut SSN-22, and USS Jimmy Carter SSN-23. The third vessel was uniquely modified with a 100-foot hull extension known as the multi-mission platform, designed to support advanced surveillance operations and the deployment of special operations forces. This limited production run, while creating an elite trio of highly capable submarines, also introduced significant logistical hurdles over the long term. With only 3 vessels in existence, spare parts for the Seawolf-class fleet became increasingly rare. Maintenance and overhaul efforts for these boats are time-consuming, costly, and often require bespoke manufacturing of components that are no longer mass-produced. The small fleet size also means that losing even a single boat for an extended period places disproportionate strain on the Navy's overall operational readiness, especially given the increasingly aggressive posture of Chinese and Russian submarine forces around the world. The Connecticut's collision occurred on October 2, 2021, during a deployment in the Western Pacific, as tensions in the Indo-Pacific region continued to intensify. According to post-incident assessments, the submarine struck an uncharted seamount at considerable speed while submerged. Though no lives were lost, several sailors sustained injuries, and the vessel suffered serious damage to its bow, including the destruction of the sonar dome, structural deformation, and likely internal shock damage to critical systems. The event forced the submarine to make a harrowing journey back to port. It first limped into Guam for damage assessment, then was transported across the Pacific to San Diego before finally arriving at the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard for what was initially described as routine maintenance but soon revealed itself to be a far more complicated repair effort. The Navy's investigation concluded that the collision was avoidable and attributed the accident to a failure of leadership and breakdowns in navigation practices aboard the Connecticut. As a result, the boat's commanding officer, executive officer, and chief of the boat were all relieved of duty. The incident underscored growing concerns about declining standards and high operational tempo in the submarine force, as well as the risks of operating increasingly complex vessels with overburdened crews. The Navy emphasized that the mistakes made were preventable and reflective of command climate issues and procedural lapses, rather than unavoidable hazards of deep-sea navigation. Repairing a damaged submarine under ordinary circumstances is a daunting task, but repairing one of the Navy's rarest and most complex vessels, especially with a heavily damaged bow and aging components, proved uniquely difficult. The Connecticut formally entered an extended docking selected restricted availability (EDSRA) period at Puget Sound in 2023. This type of maintenance cycle is standard for aging nuclear submarines, but in Connecticut's case, it has become a prolonged restoration project. Initially expected to last around 31 months, the EDSRA timeline has since been extended into late 2026 due to engineering challenges, parts shortages, and broader shipyard backlogs. One of the key delays involved the replacement of the submarine's sonar dome, a critical component that houses sensors essential for detecting underwater threats and navigating safely. Because the Seawolf-class sonar dome is a specialized part no longer in production, the Navy had to fund the custom manufacturing of a new one, which itself required more than 3 years of lead time and cost at least $10 million. Funding for the repairs was first authorized by Congress in the FY 2022 defense budget, with $50 million allocated for initial repair work. However, the total cost of returning the Connecticut to service is expected to be significantly higher. The full figure has not been disclosed but is estimated by defense analysts to approach hundreds of millions of dollars, making it one of the most expensive peacetime submarine repairs in U.S. Navy history. The engineering team overseeing the repairs faced several compounding issues. Not only did they have to address the physical damage caused by the collision, but they also had to work around the reality that no other class of submarine shares interchangeable systems with the Seawolf. The USS Jimmy Carter, although part of the same class, features major structural modifications that render its parts largely incompatible. Moreover, because the Seawolf line was discontinued in the 1990s, much of the original industrial infrastructure supporting the boats has either been retired or repurposed, requiring the Navy and its contractors to rebuild technical capacity that had atrophied over decades. This long repair timeline comes at a moment of growing strategic urgency. The Navy's submarine fleet, long considered one of the United States' most decisive military advantages, has been stretched thin by increasing deployments and aging vessels. The Pentagon has identified the undersea domain as a key area of great power competition, particularly in the Indo-Pacific theater, where China's naval expansion includes aggressive submarine development and undersea surveillance capabilities. The loss of the Connecticut from the fleet for multiple years has meant that only 2 Seawolf-class boats remain operational, and one of them, the USS Seawolf, is scheduled to enter its own EDSRA period in 2026. This would leave only the USS Jimmy Carter, a platform primarily optimized for intelligence gathering and special missions, to represent the entire Seawolf-class force in active service during a critical time. Compounding these concerns is the fact that the Navy's next-generation submarine project, SSN-X, remains in the early conceptual and design stages. Intended to eventually succeed the Virginia and Seawolf-class submarines with even more advanced capabilities, SSN-X is not expected to begin construction until the late 2030s, or early 2040s, meaning that existing boats will need to remain in service far beyond their originally intended lifespans. That makes the successful restoration of the Connecticut not only an engineering necessity but a strategic one. Despite these challenges, progress on the repairs is moving forward, albeit slowly. Officials at the Naval Sea Systems Command and Puget Sound Naval Shipyard have confirmed that the work remains a high-priority project. Investments in workforce capacity, infrastructure upgrades, and advanced manufacturing are being funneled toward ensuring that the Connecticut returns to the fleet on schedule. The goal is not only to make the submarine seaworthy again but to ensure that it retains its full combat capability for the remainder of its service life, likely extending into the 2040s. When the Connecticut eventually returns to the fleet, it will do so as a reminder of both the promise and the vulnerability of high-performance military assets. It will be returning to a world of increased tension, contested waters, and rising near-peer threats. But it will also be a testament to the endurance of a platform that, despite suffering a crippling blow in one of the most sensitive regions on Earth, was restored not only with steel and welding torches but with institutional will and strategic necessity. For the Navy, getting the Connecticut back to sea is about more than just recovering from an accident. It's about making sure the United States retains its edge beneath the surface in the decades to come.